Hey, welcome to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour, Election Day. And just in case you weren't sure, this is the day. I think, what is it? Republicans vote today, Democrats tomorrow? Is that how it works?
I think so.
Just kidding. I know. I saw some of that. Both sides had little political jokes. Whatever side you wanted, you said, oh, yeah, you guys vote today and the other guys vote tomorrow. Did you know in some states they actually have different days, different primaries and caucuses and stuff for the primary season where, one day is Democrats, the other day is Republicans. So it might sound a little funny, but in some states it actually does have different dates. So you have to be very careful. But, look, you're not going to always agree with me, and certainly you're not going to agree with any of the politicians. Heck, you don't even agree with your spouse, and you're going to be living and marrying with them for hopefully more than 4 or 8 years. So part of this is to understand that you're going to be frustrated. We know at least 45% of America is going to be sad or disappointed this time tomorrow.
Right.
They're going to be unhappy. They're going to be angry, scared. I don't know. Today it seems like it's almost every emotion under the sun that they are attaching to this, and some rightfully so, some a bit exaggerated. So we know that this time tomorrow, some of you are not going to be happy. I want to encourage you a couple of things, though. In this process, financially, your life is going to go on. You and me and many others have businesses to run and or work for, or your spouse is working for a company or owns a company, and all of those things are not going to end 24 hours from this moment. So still be focused on taking care of you and your family, remembering that you have some choices to make every day on how to build your wealth, how to stay successful, how to make yourself financially better tomorrow than you were yesterday, right? That's all part of our own responsibility. And all of that happens as we go forward with some key components, things to remember, things to live by, right, Jeff? When we sit and talk about this stuff, one of those things that I want you to focus on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour with myself, Arif Halaby, and that's Jeff Gerard. Unless you don't like what I say, then my name is...
I'll take one for the team. That's fine.
My name is Jeff. 2 Jeffs. All right. Arif Halaby here. What are some of the reasons that you should not lend money to a friend? That's an interesting segue. Not the one you ride, but an actual segue, a transition. Well, here's why that matters. Because tomorrow, somebody is going to have a financial problem in their life because they did yesterday and they will the day after tomorrow. It's always going to be there. You're going to have friends and family, people who struggle. The more successful you appear and or you really are, the more your door is going to have people standing at and want to borrow money.
Sometimes a flashing sign.
Look, I have an acquaintance who was a professional athlete, and he will tell you that life was good and everybody kind of made fun of him because he would practice a lot as he was growing up, but he became really good, in fact very, very good, and made lots of money. And he pretty much doesn't talk to his family anymore because everybody had a business adventure or a problem, or just help me bail my son out of jail, or help me start my new business, or I want to buy a new car, and you don't understand what it takes to go to college these days. And everybody had a problem, and they were knocking on his door. And you feel at first, oh yeah, guilty that you actually have some level of success. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It just has to be more than the person who's asking, right? Because if the person is asking, then they may or may not have a huge financial problem, but they're always going to think you're better off. And that's what happens. So you may have times when people will come knocking on your door and want to borrow money. When that happens, how do you handle it? When do you know it's the right thing to do? When do you know if it's the wrong thing to do? We're going to cover some of those things here on your Safer Money Hour. All right, Jeff. We see this happening a lot.
We do. And I think when it comes to the point of this, like peer-to-peer borrowing, I'm going to call it, because if you go to an institution and borrow money, there's really no emotion behind it. Maybe you'd be upset if you got denied a loan.
True.
If you're applying, but if you got it, great. And then the emotion goes away, and then now it's just become a business transaction. But when you're dealing with a family member, a loved one, a close friend, that generally right there speaks for itself. There is something that has to be salvaged at the end of this transaction, if you want to call it that. If you borrow money from a family friend, a relative, you have a relationship that's really on the line here. And I've seen this time and again. Now, it doesn't just go for loans. I mean, it could be business. It could be going in on a piece of property together. We've seen plenty of times where that's happened. But money is not bad, but we can see that when it's not handled properly between people that supposedly care about one another, it can really rip them apart.
It can be, because often people forget that whoever earned the money, their time may be more valuable than yours or less. And people say, what do you think, your time? Yeah, somebody's paying them $1,000 an hour to hit a baseball or to swim in a pool or to stand in front of a commercial. And somebody's paying you $10 an hour. Yes, their time is more valuable. I didn't make the rules. Somebody else is paying them. So you have to remember that you just stole, if it's $1,000, if you're not paying it back, you just stole an hour of their time, and they cannot get that back.
Sure.
So if you're going to borrow money from somebody and not pay them back, you took whatever time that money is equivalent to. Now, you might say, I remember the cast of Friends every week. They worked, I don't know, however many hours, 30, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, whatever you did when you did a show. And those guys made $1 million a week. I remember when they all negotiated that. $1 million a week.
Wow.
So you might say, I took $5,000 and never planned on paying it back, and it didn't work out, and tough luck. All right, so you took 15 seconds. I don't know, 48 seconds of their life. It's still
Sure.
time they can never get back. So remember this, that if you are going to borrow money, here's an old saying. I love this saying, and I actually have found it to be true. If you never want to see somebody ever again, you're just a pain in the butt. You hang around. I just don't like you. I just don't want you around me. I'm going to lend you money because you will duck, dodge, and hide from me all day long. If I want to be your friend, if I want you to hang out with me and you just won't, I'm going to borrow money from you.
There you go.
Because you're going to be calling me all the time. So now what are you doing? What are you doing now? What are you doing now?
Did you go to work today?
Yeah, did you go to work today? How you feeling?
How you feeling?
Okay? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? So it just depends. Do I want to be your friend or do I not want to be your friend? Do I want to see you or do I not want to see you? Both of those things can be handled with money. But more seriously, there may be times when it makes financial sense. When do these things come up a lot? It comes up when interest rates in banks, where most people are putting money, right, are just low. And you go, it's a safe place. I get reasonable returns in the old days, but today I'm getting 1/10 of 1% or something. At least I'll give it to my brother-in-law.
Right. And you may work out a deal. And that's one of the tips we're going to give you today is if you are the lender of the money, you're going to have to put something in writing. You have to put something in place. And what I think is really important, and I try to instill this in my children as early as possible, that they're going to go without. If they borrow, they're going to go without that money for whatever length of time. And why did they do that? Is it because they're nice? Well, maybe. But when it comes to a financial sense and to being fiscally sound, I think you should charge someone interest because that way they feel like they've attached a little bit more effort than just paying the money back. They had to work a little bit harder to pay back a little bit more than they borrowed for the inconvenience that they caused you. Now, look, if you took $5,000 from me in Arif's example, and I make $1 million a week, am I going to go hungry? Probably not. But the principle is the important part here, and I think it does two things. It not only gives you that. It makes it a sound transaction. It makes it something that is going to be viable. And then the other part is it places some value on the other side for the person, not just like, they're going to forget about it. I can't tell you how many relatives I've seen just, like you said, Arif, they just kind of, social gatherings, family gatherings, they just become awkward after a while when you have that money lingering because you don't want to talk about it. They don't want to bring it up. They're kind of ducking you and dodging you. And eventually you got to meet eyes, whether it's across the room or you have to say goodbye or say hello. I mean, that can cause some issues.
And there's a few things that I want you to focus on when that happens. You may have a time when you say, we're going to enter into this transaction. The more business-minded you can keep it. So in other words, we're sitting down together and you're going to lend money to a friend. You write it out. Because I would bet that a big percentage of misunderstandings of how and when you're going to pay it back is truly just that, a misunderstanding, right? Where people sit down and they say, well, I thought you meant, and no, what I said was, and it's too late. The money had changed hands and it's gone. So how do you make sure that you're on the same page? In my opinion, write it down. You said it right, Jeff. Come to an agreement. We both know it. There's copies. There's witnesses.
Right.
There's people that are not involved, not your wife or my wife or your cousin or my cousin or your girlfriend or my girl. None of that. It's the witnesses are third party, somebody at least once removed, who sit down and say, okay, how much are we borrowing, when and where? And okay, Jeff, yep, this is your signature. Yes, okay. Witnessed by Mary Jones. Okay, witnessed by Steve Smith. We each have a witness. It's signed.
There
you have
go.
your copy. I have mine. And in that agreement, I don't just want, Arif borrows $5,000 and agrees to pay it back before March 1st of 2017. No. It has to say, what if I don't pay it back? What's the recourse? That's nice. And how am I supposed to? So think of it this way. You want to answer the who, what, when, why, and how. When you focus on that, it allows you to build an agreement that has a foundation. Now, you can find these agreements online, of course, all over the place. But think of it this way. Who? Me and you. Let's say I'm going to borrow money from Jeff, right? So the agreement is going to have the borrower and the lender. Just like if it's, the bank and the citizen. So that's the who. The what? And it's borrow. Arif is going to borrow money from Jeff. How much? $5,000. When? Effective today, November 8th, 2016. How am I going to pay it back? I'm going to pay it back in 3 payments, 6 payments, this much per month. And what happens if I don't pay it back? Well, after March, if it's not paid off, Arif gives up his computer or a gun. I buy a laptop of some sort, or a tool or a piece of equipment or a watch or jewelry. You get it? Something has to go from that person that's worth a lot more than the $5,000. So if I have a $10,000 item, I need to know that if I don't pay that $5,000, I'm going to lose $10,000 worth of a diamond ring or watch or gold or something. And if you're not sure of that relationship yet, act just like a pawn shop. Take that money and put it in an escrow. Say, I'll give you $5,000 on this agreement, and I'm going to hold on to that diamond watch, ring, tool, right, whatever it is, and I'm going to put that in my safe. And if you don't pay me back by March 1st, it's mine. Even if there's $1 outstanding, I get to keep the entire thing. When you pay me back early, you can have it back tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Right? So, and that's a negotiation. You could say, gosh, I won't give you the $10,000 thing, but I'll give you the $8,000. Okay, that's fine, but then I want more interest. Okay, then that's fine. So those things are written down. And there are times, look, I was just talking to my dad recently, and in fact, yesterday. And he was telling me, we were talking about a mutual friend, and I didn't know this. My dad is an amazingly generous man. He's an incredible human being, actually. And I remember sitting down with him years ago. We were talking about my grandma, who for years and years, was struggling, always struggling. And I remember sitting down with her one time, and I made a little extra money, and I gave her a little extra, and she says, no, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh, Grandma, no. And I come to find out she's been supporting orphans in Lebanon from the war for as long as she's been in the United States. She left and escaped the war, but was sending money back to orphanages that were helping out the kids who lost their parents. Huh. She was doing that for 20 years. We didn't know that. I didn't. I think my dad did, but none of it. It wasn't common knowledge amongst us.
And here she was struggling.
Huh. And so there are things like that where people will give expecting nothing in return. Whether you give to your grandmother, whether she gives to a charity, whether you give to a charity, that's a different relationship. But if you are going to give, and my dad said, look, I had a friend and his car broke down. He didn't have money for a car. And he's telling me, and I know this guy pretty well. He said, so I gave him $5,000 for a car, and he paid me back, and life was good. And so I said, when did you do this? He says, well, we had it all written out and signed. Well, that's what you're supposed to do, Dad. I didn't know this. So I share that with you because if somebody does that, mom, dad, sister, brother, cousin, I want you to know about it or somebody else, because what if they pass away? A year ago, my dad was in a coma. He was in a hospital, and it didn't look good for a couple of weeks. We didn't know. I don't know if this money was outstanding at that time or not. I didn't get into that detail because it's all been paid off. But if you're somebody that is lending money to people and the money is outstanding, you want to know about it. Make sure it's sitting in a safe or in a safe deposit box or in your file, someplace where this is the go-to if something happens to you. This is the go-to notebook if you pass away.
Mm-hmm. I can give you a personal example as a child. I call myself a child at 16 because I can say that because I'm not a child anymore. But at 16, I didn't know better to write this down. I thought, hey, I need some tires for my pickup truck, for my Toyota pickup. And I said, Mom, can I have, sorry, son, right now, you're just going to have to wait. Or, hey, why don't you ask your uncle? It's a good idea. Okay, hey, I'll go ask my uncle. Borrowed about $400, bought some new tires, paid him back. Took me a little bit of time to do that because I was only working part-time. Paid him back. And wouldn't you know it, I would say within a year, hey, did you ever pay me back that?
Oh, no kidding.
$400? Said, yeah, Uncle, I paid you back. Are you sure? I know I did because I'm less $400 and I think you're flush $400. But that was the thing where he questioned it and I questioned it, and I had to recall the steps and tell him when I was there and when I paid it and how I paid it and how many bills. Had it all been written out and had a receipt. It keeps the water from getting muddy.
And today, if you are the borrower and you are borrowing money, I want you to be protected just as much. Forget it. It's not a one-way street here, folks. You can get hurt in both directions here, especially if you're giving collateral like, that diamond watch or something, right? I want you to get paid back. How do you do that? You're going to, as Jeff was saying, a receipt. But today, you can write checks. You can pay online. There's receipts that last forever. Ask Hillary Clinton. Right? These emails last forever. You can't say or do something that WikiLeaks isn't going to find out. Right now, the WikiLeaks doesn't care about me, so they don't have my receipts, but they'll find them. And you want to be very careful. If you're out there paying money back, I want it to be documented so that you don't make a mistake and you don't have that same thing happen. It can be done in a credit card, right? People can pay online, credit card, PayPal. And I don't know, is there another online Square, right?
Square
thing.
Yeah, we didn't have any of that when I was 16.
Yeah, what's that again?
Venmo.
That's another online pay. Probably a competitor of PayPal, I'm guessing, yeah? Yeah, so there's amazing ways, but you document. And in today's world, I want you to send yourself an email. Date and time. Right? You should have a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or an AOL account with unlimited storage somewhere. And you just sock those things away and you create a little folder. It's receipts. So you can narrow it down from the world of all your emails to this particular transaction and then that date and time. All right, we're going to take a break. I'm going to come back. I'm going to give you some reasons why you should never lend money to friends and family. We gave you some ways to do it, but what are some of the things to avoid? And I'm going to give you some workarounds too, because I think that's important. Sometimes there are different reasons to do it. And it takes different forms. So when we come back, we'll get into some of those details. I'm Arif Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard on your place for News Talk and Information. Total Financial Solutions. Safer Money Hour. We'll be right back.